Okay, as well as keeping in mind what is the business of that particular organization, what is the regulatory compliance, and every organization has to take its own journey of cybersecurity depending on what they need to protect. And there is one more thing which is really very important that affects the cybersecurity budgeting is the dynamically changing the threat landscape and the new modus operandi of every cyber attack. Plus, you have to do a lot of risk management, communicate with management, taking legal and privacy opinions and choosing from the laundry list of, all the cybersecurity technology offerings. We always wish that we had one technology for all security requirements, for all your security. But again, being a security guys, we all know that that becomes a single point of failure, and security has to be a multi-layered approach, right? So to solve that dilemma of ours, I have an industry veteran who has spent almost 3 decades in technology and security. Mr. Subramania Gupta Boda. He is a digital transformation and cybersecurity professional working with Brigade Group today and as a head IT and digital security. In his previous roles, he was a chief technology advisor at NABARD and uh, a global CISO at GMR Group. With he was also working with Mercedes-Benz in a research and development team India, where he was very instrumental in setting up the consulting and IT security practice in 2002. In 2002. He began his career at Central Research Laboratory, Ghaziabad, which was a division of Bharat Electronics Limited. He holds a he's a Bachelor of Electronics and Communication from Andhra University and a Master's from BITS Pilani in Software Systems. He's also a senior member of IEEE and Paul Harris Fellow of Rotary International. And he's also been mentor to a lot of cybersecurity individuals in our industry and cybersecurity companies. With all that, I welcome Boda sir, Gupta ji, to please start your camera. Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Welcome to this session.
Very good morning, and
Very good.
And lovely to see so many participants and also some gurus I have from the industry. I've learned a thing or two from them, including Gaurav, who is a specialist. When I have questions around certain things, I do call up Gaurav too. Right.
Right. Right, guys. So, before we start, Gupta ji, how do you feel about today's session? What do you think? What are your thoughts for it?
Yeah, I'm excited. Firstly, before I go and start anything, whatever I'm going to express, these are purely my personal views and nothing to do with my current or my previous employers, so that they're indemnified from whatever I say here.
The disclaimer stands for everyone. Thanks a
Right.
lot for that, Gupta ji.
Right.
Right.
So I have a couple of thoughts I've thought. Let me see if I can present.
So before we go ahead with that,
sure.
Gupta sir, what I would like to do is I would like to run couple of polls, so that my audience can really we can definitely justify our discussions out here. So Iqbal, can we go ahead and do some first 3 polls?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be launching the first poll.
Yeah. Guys, please go ahead and answer that. What is your role in security budgeting, so that we can have more discussions on that?
Is my poll visible?
Very much visible.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we see some responses coming in too.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, a little nudge would help. I think we have reached a good number.
Okay, so we'll be running the next poll.
Hold on.
Shall we run?
Just,
Ajay,
I
sir?
think we have good numbers. I think just few more people, they're contemplating what to put in.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Let's give
Somesh
them
is
a
asking,
second
can
or
we?
so.
Yeah. So Somesh is asking, can we have more than one choice? Somesh, whatever you are best with, you can just answer so that it helps us to formalize the content accordingly. So you can, if you are linked to review and approve, just click that. That's more than enough.
I think it's ideal to choose the best fit. You may be spending a lot more time on one aspect than other aspect. That's what will help in kind of tuning the session in that manner.
Perfect. So I think let's go on to the next poll. Before we go on to that next poll, we have 20% who are into preparation. There are almost 30% guys who are recommending. There are 10% guys who review and approve the cybersecurity budget, and 20% who has an end-to-end ownership. Right? We have good 18% who do not have a role. It seems like they are more into preparation, I would put in than them. So we have almost 35% who are more into cybersecurity preparation, and 30% in recommendation, and almost 20% in end-to-end ownership. Can we go ahead with the next poll, Gupta ji?
Yes, please. This is
Yes.
a very good view in terms of, the preparation and recommendation is one of the toughest challenges. We'll figure out what to cover there.
Yes. Yeah. Iqbal, let's go ahead with the second poll. What is your role of cybersecurity? No, I think you just started with the same poll.
1 second. There is some technical issue. I'll just relaunch it.
Yeah. I can do it from my end, Iqbal. Should I do it?
Yeah, that would be better because there is some technical issue from my side.
No props. No props. I think that's good to have a BCB strategy always. Great. We have polls coming in here, and
Typically, regulated company is something that is governed by certain laws, like, say, for example, BFSI, banking is regulated by many rules and compliances that are required as per the RBI. Similarly, stockbroking. Stockbroking companies have similar challenge of complying to SEBI, or insurance companies have regulatory requirements to comply to IRDA.
no, sir. We can definitely hear you. We
Is
can
it-
definitely. It's here. We can hear you.
Yes,
we can hear
we
you.
can
No
hear
problem.
you, sir.
So I think there's a bit of challenge from right. If it is a critical infrastructure, companies like power generation and critical infrastructure like the waterways, transportation, telecom, these are all regulated by national critical infrastructure related rules. And those are the kind of things, a typical manufacturing company might not be regulated, or an e-commerce company at this point, it's pretty much no regulation. So that's what we are kind of looking at. I mean,
So we have almost 75 plus percentage guys who are regulated as part of our audience, and almost 15% plus we have who are from unregulated segment. And there are almost 10% guys who are not aware of what. So when I say they are not aware, it's more or less I would put it them as the unregulated segment. Let's do that, right? So
is regulated, they would definitely know.
that's right. That's right. The regulator would always come after them.
Yes. Sometimes it happens that we do not know because it's not regulated. One part. It could be that the industry itself, or that the sector is an emerging sector. We really do not know where to put it.
Right. So let's end this and let's go ahead and start the another poll. And this is the last poll for the start. And let me launch that. Yeah. So what is the size of the company in terms of revenue in Indian entity? Are you a micro enterprise, small or medium sized enterprise, or a large size enterprise? So yeah. So any company with more than 250 CR revenue is termed as a large sized enterprise. So
I think the challenges with a large company are extremely different from a micro company. And
that's right.
so it's ideal to get some kind of distribution, understand how and cover these topics appropriately.
Perfect. So I think we have got a good mix. We have 60% companies who are into large size companies, large enterprises, and we have 24% companies who are mid-sized companies, right? And small and micro segment companies are almost 15% we have, right? So I think that's a good mix we have. We can always address this, right? So I think with that, let me end the poll and hand over the stage to you. Uh, right, guys. So let's do before the flow of this session would be that I would like to allow Boda sir to present his slides, give him his perspective that how do we really plan and prepare this budget for cybersecurity, considering we have 60% of the crowd which is large enterprise and 75% of the crowd is more of a regulated crowd, and where almost 60% who are involved in preparation and complete end-to-end thing. How do we really look at the planning of your cybersecurity budgets, right? So once we finish, when Boda sir is able to complete his presentation, we will be having a fireside chat, and we will be having a good 25 to 30 minutes for taking up the questions from LinkedIn and the people who are attending here, right? So without wasting much time, Boda sir, over to you.
The cybersecurity budgeting is a tough terrain, and that's kind of shown in the background in a way. See if you can see that. There are some thoughts which are before we take it forward. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, right. See, cybersecurity budgeting is a pretty complicated aspect, and there are no easy answers. There are no right answer. There's no wrong answer. At the same time, why is it such a difficult subject? Say it it's mainly due to the lack of several things like the data of other cybersecurity budgets of other companies, how they've been dealing with, or the kind of things related to even the the threats or the data breach costs, or there's no consistent way or there is no reliable way we could depend on some data to kind of make our choices. In the same time, say if we take within the same industry sector, say banking, bank to bank, the cybersecurity budget varies a lot. The variation is too high at this point in time. Now, given the current scenario, we have to start somewhere, and the somewhere is basically with respect to the nature of business determines the nature of business determines the 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 amount of budget that is probably necessary to protect, especially the criticality of the business. BFSI versus manufacturing, BFSI banking, finance, securities, insurance. This
Boda sir, uh, can you be bit near to the mic? I think there are people who are not able to get the voice clearly.
is it better?
It is better if you are near to the mic. Yes.
Okay, probably this is a little bit too far from me. Yeah, right. The BFSI segment is very different. And within BFSI segment itself is what we discussed. The variations are too high. An Indian bank probably has X number of controls, and a similar bank which is originated or probably headquartered in another geography has a lot more controls compared to an Indian entity. And that's a typical example. Whereas a similar manufacturing entity in suburbs of say something like a medium-sized company may not have such a criticality with respect to our sensitivity around cybersecurity. Then comes the size of business. Size of business is kind of determined by, we kind of talked about revenue definitely, but revenue, more than revenue, it's the geographies, the number of employees, it's a people intensive versus non-people intensive kind of. There are challenges around that as well. And based on these parameters, the security budget can change. Then information infrastructure or the information and communication technology landscape, whichever we call it, the information infrastructure, the amount of automation, the amount of the IT penetration within a company determines again the level of cybersecurity needed. Then comes the data. Data is the new oil, data is the new gold. Everybody is trying to kind of monetize data. Earlier, it was lying in a database or lying in a flat file. Nobody cared about it. Now everybody wants to talk about, okay, can I mine this information, whatever I have, and make something more out of it? This is where the amount of information assets possessed by a company determine what else or what kind of controls that are necessary. Sometimes it's what happens. Some company or a certain company may have a business of only processing for somebody else instead of for themselves. So then the rules and the way the data is treated, how the information is processed and protected determines their level of security budget. Then regulatory requirements, always it's an evolving space. We have the IT Act came in almost like 2001. I think when the draft rules were there, 2010 evolved, then 2011 additional rules were there. Then today we are talking about DPA, Data Protection Act. Then in between, there were so many regulatory requirements from RBI, IRDA, SEBI, and Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So many things came in. Then lastly, the threat landscape. This is completely out of our control. This is nothing to do with anything related to our own business. It's somebody else's business. And today it is being looked at a good lucrative business, invest some small money, buy a probably rootkit and attack somebody and extort money. It is becoming an industry on itself. One of the biggest thing is ransomware, right? And others were DDoS. Could be for competition to sabotage somebody else's business. These are, in the past, it was more like an individual with motive of probably proving a point or proving their expertise, or a script kiddie probably trying out tools to more organized, collaborated, funded, and often nation sponsored.
Okay. Sorry, Gupta sir. Gupta sir. I think there is some challenges. We have, people in the chat box. They have some issues with they are not able to hear you because of some mic issues. Either it's an internet issue or a mic issue. Um, can you? Is it possible for you to go on the earphones and use the mic closer to your mouth? If can we give that as a try? If that is okay.
Let me try again. Is this any better?
Uh, I can hear you very clearly. That's not a problem. If
Wait for
but
others, maybe.
let's wait for others to see that, and just get the mic closer of the earphone closer to your.
There's no separate earphone for this. It's actually inbuilt earphone. That's why I'm not able to figure out what is wrong.
Okay. Guys, is it can you just put it on the chat if you guys are able to hear him better so that we can continue with the discussion?
Okay. At least one response came in as voice is clear. Apologies, gentlemen and ladies. There is definitely something I've been doing this with others. Yeah.
Okay, now it is better.
Now it's better.
Gupta sir.
We'll do that. We'll do that. So we kind of covered pretty much the kind of aspects. Yeah, good. Good. I'm hearing some good messages, at least good. So the cybersecurity budget largely depends on nature of business we discussed, the criticality, the size of business. Revenue is definitely one aspect. Geographies and employees are that additional aspects that need to be considered. Then information infrastructure or ICT landscape, the current infrastructure available, and the information assets that a company possesses or processes we talked about. Then regulatory requirement, which is evolving and ever evolving, and threat landscape, which is a rapidly evolving from a unorganized to a very highly organized, funded, even nation sponsored. This is where we kind of live in, right? I think Ajay, this is where we'll come back to the process of budgeting once we start few questions. I'll stop the share the slides here.
Yeah, so let's
and we'll
let's
come
let's
back
keep
to
this.
that.
I think you have very well tried to. Okay, let me start my camera. Yeah. So you have very well made the concept of cybersecurity budgeting. We all know it's quite complicated, but it largely depends on the nature and the size of businesses and majorly the threat landscape and well positioned thought process. So now let me start with our discussion on this, Boda sir. Now, when we talk about the cybersecurity budgets, there are multiple aspects of it. One of the major aspects which I see is that in India, where we have seen that especially the cybersecurity is defined from a regulation and non-regulation perspective, and that's what our question was. And today, we have majority of audience as a who belongs to a regulated industry. Now, uh, without actually going, how do we really define a cybersecurity budget? What is your thought process on how budgeting should be approached in the regulated industry and unregulated industry? What is your thoughts on that?
Okay. Uh, to kind of introduce the cybersecurity budget is not a simple process. I'll just kind of introduce the next slide probably to give you a complete end-to-end process. From there, we come back to deep dive into each of the topics and coming. Right?
Much better. Yes, sir, your screen is visible.
Yes, the screen is visible. Okay, perfect. I think I'm getting some kind of first and foremost, the budgeting process of cybersecurity involves a 5 stage. It starts with initiative identification. What is that we are trying to do for any cybersecurity? And we deep dive into each of those. Then comes the cost identification. For each of those initiatives, there is a cost associated. And that is consolidated and prepared what is called as a budget. And that goes through the budget approval process. There are challenges. It's not easy. We'll talk about those things as well, how to navigate some of them. Then comes, once a budget is approved, the picture is not complete. Abhi picture baki hai. Okay, that's when we start with executing, and suddenly something happens, business situation changes, budget cuts announced. Now, how do we protect the budget? That situation is the second part. While this is happening, probably if everything is fine, we have executed, no budget cuts, thank God. Then comes the one of the toughest challenge we call as demonstrating the value or return on security investment. Rosy ROSI is never a rosy picture. That becomes one of the biggest challenge. And probably a technique called benchmarking could help in certain aspects. Now, is the process is you know has different depths one need to go through. We can go as we explore with Ajay. He takes us to some of his questions. We'll take and deep dive into each of these aspects.
Perfect, sir. So my question is that once, while we are talking, and you talked about budget process, right? Before I come to that question again, there is one thing is that preparing for the complete security roadmap, across the organization for next 3 years, 5 years. And one thing is that once we have the security roadmap, then focus on the budgeting process. Now, this is different for when we talk about coming to the question, and now linking back this to the question is this is very different for a regulated industry or an organization belonging to regulated industry, right? So, how do we really approach this?
Okay. First and foremost, regulated, not regulated. I think when we are talking about the budget, I think we should separate, keep it aside. It's the budget is ultimately it's a list of items, right? And some budget has some cost and list of item and cost. That's how it is kind of coming back to at a very, very abstract level. I'm kind of bringing that abstract level, right? Now, how do we bring that regulation into play? Let's come into the next process, right? How do we identify the initiative? See, first and foremost, every initiative, whichever cybersecurity, these are purely cybersecurity initiatives we are discussing, right? Are purely, if they're aligned to business, they get highest alignment, which is basically the chances of getting the budget approved. So really bring it up. Okay. We'll take one more deep dive into that business driven. Then comes the risk driven. Yeah, there is a business, definitely. We have certain directives. Now comes the risk. The risk is coming from various aspects. The regulatory could be compliance driven, as we discussed the other part, or due to certain actions or certain developments or certain infrastructure, the IT driven, or how we are trying to meet that risk, either trying to reduce, mitigate. There is an additional part which I have not addressed here called transfer. This is predominantly insurance or outsourcing. That part comes into play. So if there is an initiative taken to reduce the risk or to mitigate the risk, either in a proactive manner or in a reactive manner. Say a reactive manner is something example, we found certain employees are now started taking data out. In the past, they were not able to take data out, or they're not interested in taking the data out. Now they started taking data out. Now, how do we resolve such a thing? One, definitely put some kind of awareness. It's a people level. Process level, look at which data is critical and what requires, rather identify that the access to such data is available only as per the process which the team is working on. Then comes the technology aspects, wherein you put in some controls like could be, upload, could be email, could be, data leakage prevention or USB, or could be pen and paper if it is plain, or preventing a mobile to be taken inside the work process area. There could be the depth can be anywhere. And that's where the kind of initiative can come in. Each of these initiatives, when we talk about it, will have certain line item which will have creating an awareness program. It's a line item. And how do we do it? Internal, outsource, so many other ways to do it. Then there's a cost to do it. To sustain such a awareness initiative, there's a cost to do it. Then change of process. It may require retraining the people or adding additional controls there. or creating access controls, there is an effort that may be absorbed in the current IT operations or security operations topic. But then if that is a constant process, then you may have to really look at capacity that is necessary to address those kind of challenges or address those kind of controls, access controls. And third, the technology. If there is a way or a technology already put in place which prevents USB copy, deploy. If there are not, figure out with the existing infrastructure what can be done. If not, figure out an alternate or a tool or a technology piece that need to be introduced to execute or implement that control. That's the typical way. Or a proactive approach in this case is, okay, I know I'm going to introduce a new market, and this new market is probably related to the European geography, probably Germany or France. Now, knowing that we're going to deal with the geography of Germany, it falls under European. And even before that risk comes into play, we'll proactively put certain controls compliant to GDPR or even further controls that can be required. That is a way to do it proactively. That's typical. Then comes the scenario of the current security landscape. Our current security are maturity based. We already have, say, 10 controls implemented and 20 technologies addressed. Now, in the current context, say, for example, a typical example is a VPN access. Today, everybody's talking about ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access or Zero Trust App Access, ZTAA, alternatively. Why VPN is solving the problem? Why do you need ZTNA? There is a simplest explanation for that is the border or the network border is fragmented and fragile, and people are required to work beyond a single device, beyond a geography, beyond an office space, beyond things like, or rather work from anywhere. Let's put it this way, work from anywhere. And the roles are rapidly evolving. That is when you start looking at the trust access is trust and access is becoming challenging to maintain with a traditional tool like a VPN, which will pretty much give a flat access. Now you need a fine-grained access. That is when you start looking at ZTNA. Now, in the current scenario, another scenario is antivirus, another example. A typical example of antivirus, it's been functioning. Okay, there is a level of antivirus which has from a pure signature based to a little bit of heuristic based to a little bit of AML based to now people are talking about completely next generation antivirus with endpoint detection and response or extended detection and response. Now, while the control was working, but the evolution of the threat landscape is kind of evaluating our existing controls in a different light. That is when the cybersecurity landscape has to be looked at. Right. Then sometimes comes benchmark. By the way, our competitor has done something, so let's do it. Or before our competitor does, let's do it. If you want to be ahead of it. Then comes the master stroke. Some vendor comes and says, okay, sir, everybody else is doing this, is the newest product in the market, you should use it. You should be the first one, or something like that. Or
Standard sales talks.
it's a nice pitch you're sold. Now you will figure out a way to put it in the budget and to initiative. Right? This is a typical, it's not a very good.
So at this point, let me interfere in this presentation and ask you here that when we are talking about specific this kind of issues, when a cybersecurity budget is being prepared, and the identification is being done through risk management activities and the current security landscape. The concern comes when you receive a people from cybersecurity OEMs, when they come down and tell you that, okay, this is where you need to really buy it because everybody is buying in the industry, right?
Right.
So it no longer becomes a business-driven approach. It becomes the approach of
Me
I
too.
would have sales-driven
I
approach. I
don't
would
want to
say.
miss the bus.
I don't want to miss the bus. Now, is this something which a security or a CISO should really take it up because they feel like really want to buy the new technology because they're going to miss the bus, or they should really focus on the business aspect of it and see that it is the organization really very mature enough to really take that technology? How do you really want to look at
Oh, that's, it's you put me in a tough spot in that question already.
it? I always do that.
Right. See, it's okay. Ideally speaking, CISO's fundamental job is to minimize the risk and protect the interest of the organization, right? If the technology is genuinely helping a, and reducing the risk or preventing the risk, yeah, there is a merit in it. Consider, definitely consider. Just because it is a fancy thing to plug in, it becomes gold plating, and gold plating doesn't last too much. There has to be genuinely, you know, the, when we come to the last part of this we talked about this thing, right? The last part, it is difficult to move the slide for some reason.
The implementation part you said, right?
Yeah, the implementation and the value demonstration,
Right. The ROSI,
the
Rosie.
ROSI. This, we have implemented the technology, say assuming that we implemented the technology. And if it doesn't really add value, then it doesn't stick. If it doesn't reduce or prevent a risk, or it doesn't fulfill what it is intended benefit is, it doesn't stick into the next cycle. So why take risk? Have that clarity right there. And if it is aligning with the business driven, okay, we need to go there as well. One double click there, and risk is reducing, or there is, somebody kind of started IT driven. Like for example, earlier we were not allowing the BYOD. Now we allow BYOD. Now the moment you bring in BYOD, you need to bring in additional compensating controls, because your device controls versus somebody else's device controls are going to be different. So it's all about aligning that initiative or that product or its functionality to one of these line items.
Okay, but one thing again comes out here is that when we are talking about the current security landscape, and it's not only about putting a security control from a technology perspective, it can be a people driven or a process driven, it can be anything. And what happens is that it is the security, like the cybersecurity budgeting is also a thought process of that, do we really go ahead with what the